Horatio started to close his eyes. Suddenly, a loud noise from above jolted them open. Bong, bong, bong. Horatio leaped up. Oliver gathered the startled kitten and held him close. "Easy, Horatio. That's just Big Ben," he said softly, stroking the kitten. "It's probably the most famous clock in the world. People in many countries hear it strike the hour on their radios. Did you know that just a few coins on the pendulum keep Big Ben balanced and precisely on time?" Oliver's words were of little comfort. It was all too much for Horatio. Being chased by that horrid dog, then the lion's teeth, Charlie's gruffness, and now a loud clock. Exhausted, he fell into a deep sleep. Even Big Ben's chimes couldn't wake him. Oliver took good care of Horatio, and in a couple of days he was much stronger. One bright morning, Horatio woke to discover a long line of tourists waiting to aboard the Victorious. Charlie brought the engines to life. Chugga-chugga-chug, they spluttered. Oliver untied the heavy ropes. "Come on, Horatio," he called. "It's the first day of the tourist season, and I am going to show you Greenwich." The Victorious pushed out of the middle of the Thames. Hoping to view his new surroundings, Horatio tried to walk along the deck. But the deck was rolling with the motion of the water. In fact, everything was moving. Horatio's feet kept slipping and sliding. He felt dizzy and his tummy ached. He wondered how the river, which had always looked so smooth, could do this to him. The Victorious lurched again, sending Horatio skidding along the deck. Charlie chuckled to himself and called over to Oliver. "Look," as he pointed to Horatio. "I do believe your Admiral is seasick." "Oh, dear Horatio," Oliver sighed. "You do look rather ill." Oliver turned to the passengers. "Please don't laugh at my kitten. Can't you see he feels awful? This is Horatio's first voyage, and he has to get used to the motion. Why don't you come forward with me, Horatio, away from all this mean teasing?" Oliver coaxed. Carefully he helped Horatio wobble along the swaying deck. This was only the first of many upsets for Horatio. A wasp didn't want to share spilled ice cream with Horatio, so it stung his nose. The ravens that live at the Tower of London squawked loudly to warn Horatio that they'd bite if he wasn't careful when he visited the tower. When he didn't want to sit on her lap, a little girl pulled his tail. As Horatio peeked out from under a bench, a boy squirted him with a water pistol. There seemed to be no end to Horatio's problems. Hoping to make a friend, Horatio meowed excitedly to a passing seagull as the boat approached Tower Bridge. The seagull replied with a menacing squawk as he swooped down over Horatio's head. Horatio was so startled he nearly fell overboard. "Horatio, what a scaredy cat you are," Charlie scoffed. "Look at you with a swollen nose and watery eyes. You need to stand up for yourself like I do. No one pushes me around." "They'd be sorry if they did." Charlie waved his fist firmly, grimacing as the kitten backed away. "Don't mind him," said Oliver. "You know Dad, he thinks everyone should be tough and gruff." Just when the engine slowed to a stop as the Victorious docked at Greenwich. "All ashore for Greenwich," called Charlie. After lowering the gangway and helping off the passengers, Oliver put Horatio on his shoulder and set out to explore the town. At the Maritime Museum, Horatio looked at the glass cases as he and Oliver walked through the exhibit rooms. They were full of old guns, cannons, and stuffed models. Old paintings lined the walls. In one corner, Horatio recognized a painting of Admiral Nelson. "My namesake," he thought, as he strained for a better look. A tourist, distracted by the kitten, bumped into Oliver, and the two lurched forward. "Oops," he apologized. Just inches away, Nelson's steely eye stared right at Horatio. Sure that he was in imminent danger again, Horatio jumped down from his perch and dashed off frantically, seeking a safe place to hide. "Horatio, where are you?" Oliver called out softly, worried that the guard might see his kitten. Behind him, he heard very strange sounds coming from an old cannon. Turning around, he saw Horatio disappear into its dusty barrel. The dust made Horatio sneeze so hard he tumbled backwards to the floor. "Poor Horatio," Oliver said, picking up the kitten and brushing him off. "Perhaps you'll like the observatory and the park. I don't think anything mean can happen to you there." The Royal Observatory was filled with displays of all sorts of clocks and timepieces. In one strange room, a giant telescope poked out of the roof, and a big map of the world covered one wall. Look, Horatio, explained Oliver. This is where we are, here on the middle line. He pointed to a spot on the red line marked with a 0. Scientists have divided the world up into strips, a bit like an orange. Oliver, who always had things in his pocket, pulled out a battered orange and proceeded to peel it and remove a segment. Because the starting point is here in Greenwich, they call this the Greenwich Meridian. But to Horatio, the world looked awfully big, stretched out on a wall, and not a bit like the round orange. Here's the line, Horatio said as he carried Horatio outside. The courtyard was crossed by a long, shiny strip. It divides the eastern half of the world from the western half. Look, I can put my foot on each side. Oliver hopped from one side to the other. People all over the world set their time by the official clock here. Even Big Ben is set by this clock. When it's lunchtime here, it's breakfast time in New York, and tea time in Moscow. It's called Greenwich Mean Time. Horatio looked up with startled eyes and backed away, meowing loudly and swishing his tail back and forth. The unhappy kitten didn't quite understand all about this east and west, but he sure did understand mean. At first, Oliver was puzzled by Horatio's actions, but then he smiled understandingly. Oh, Horatio, I said mean, didn't I? Like the wasp and the boy with the squirt gun. Perhaps it's because the world is running on mean time that everyone gets so upset, fights, and doesn't want to share. And speaking of time, Oliver continued as he glanced at his watch, it's time for us to get going or we'll miss the bus. The boat. Back on board the Victorious, the two adventurers were lulled into their own thoughts by the warm sunshine and water lapping at the side of the boat. Suddenly, Horatio started to twist and stretch. Horatio, stop wiggling, Oliver said as the kitten struggled out of his arm. What has come over you? Oliver looked down at his kitten. Something strange about the look in Horatio's eyes startled Oliver. Horatio was obviously agitated. He paced back and forth, meowing loudly. As soon as Charlie docked the boat, Horatio leaped onto the quay and ran up the street. Horatio, wait for me, cried Oliver, as he scrambled off the boat and tried to catch up with his kitten. Horatio didn't even look back. He ran like a cat with a purpose, darting around cars and people. Nothing would stop him. Before long, Horatio reached the base of Big Ben's tower. The door was slightly ajar. Slipping through, he started to climb the steps, one and then two at a time, all the way to the top. On the platform of the belfry, Horatio stopped to catch his breath. Looking up, he saw the giant hammer was ready to strike the hour. The quarter bells started to chime. Horatio flattened his ears from the deafening sound. His whole body vibrated so much he had to wind his tail around the railing to keep from falling. Bong! The hour began to strike. Horatio knew he had to work fast. He ran across the platform and down to the clock room. Bong! The beating mechanism was enormous. He peered under the mechanism where the giant pendulum was swinging. Bong! Spotting the coins stacked on the pendulum, the coins that kept the mighty clock in balance, Horatio mustered every bit of strength he had left. Bong! He reached across with his paw and knocked the coins off the pendulum with one swipe. The mechanism shuddered to a halt, and the chimes stopped one short strike of 5. Except for the clink, clink, clink of the pennies falling down the shaft, everything was quiet. Horatio jumped onto the rod leading to the face of the clock. Squeezing through the opening, he poked out his head and slid onto the hour hand. Horatio peered down from his perch 180 feet above the street. He could see Oliver in the middle of what was already becoming quite a crowd of people. What happened? Asked the passerby. There are only 4 strikes, but it's 5 o'clock. Look! Screamed somebody else. There's a kitten hanging on the hour hand. Oliver, who had been searching for his kitten, looked up in amazement. It's my kitten, he shouted, squirming for a better look. Yes, it's Horatio. He stopped the clock, said a policeman who had joined the group. Why would he do that? I don't, but Oliver stopped short. As he remembered his words to Horatio while they were in Greenwich, it suddenly all made sense. Horatio stopped the clock because he's trying to stop mean time, Oliver gasps. Pardon me, interrupted another person, but what does that have to do with Big Ben? Well, continued Oliver, Horatio has mixed up mean actions with mean time. He's really a friendly kid, but all sorts of unkind things have happened to him. He knows Big Ben tells the time for people all over the world. What an incredible cat, explained the woman in a sari. If we all cared that much, things could really change. Oliver cupped his hands and called up to Horatio. Hang on tightly, Horatio. We'll get you down. There was a great deal of commotion. Fire engines arrived and long ladders were raised up to the big clock face. Carefully, a firefighter climbed up and retrieved Horatio. And here is Horatio, a television reporter said as he turned to the rescued kitten. At exactly 5 o'clock p.m. today, he stopped mean time. Horatio snuggled into Oliver's arm as the reporter continued. Found in Trafalgar Square just 6 days ago, Horatio's experiences, which have been far from pleasant, have led him to believe the world should run on kind time. Someone from the crowd shouted, 3 cheers for Horatio. Is that your son's kitten? The policeman asked Charlie, who was just joining the crowd. You must be proud of him. He certainly stood up for himself today and for everyone else. Well, yes, that's right. You could say he did. The news flashed all around the world about the kitten that wanted to stop mean time. People everywhere started to think of ways they could be kinder. Bong, bong. Oliver woke up with a start. He rubbed his eyes and looked up at the big clock face and then down at Horatio, asleep on his lap. They were still aboard the Victorious. Charlie and a group of tourists were standing over him. Dad, he shouted. Big Ben, the time, he's striking Horatio. Where are the reporters? What reporters? What are you talking about? A lot of help you are, Charlie grumbled as he pulled Oliver up to his feet. I've been looking everywhere for you, and here you are daydreaming. A dream, yes, that's what it was, Dad, but a wonderful dream. Oliver's eyes beamed as he told the story to the group of people on the boat. Just think of what it would be really like if we could stop all the meanness, Oliver mused as he finished his tale. All sorts of things could happen. Instead of fighting, people could be dancing. Instead of shouting, people could sing, a little girl chimed in. Ha ha, burglars could give back the things they stole, a man in green sweater added, chuckling at the thought. Soon everyone was calling out ideas. Guns could fire party favors, said someone. Missiles could turn into doves, said another. Mrs. Smith's dog could lick the mail carrier instead of biting him, said Charlie. Yes, yes, Dad, said Oliver. And just think, you could even take a liking to Horatio. Charlie started to protest, but he was enjoying the attention, and everyone seemed to agree. I don't know about you or your precious cat, he said to Oliver, as he picked up Horatio, but I can't say that I have ever thought of kind time. Perhaps it's time for Horatio. Oliver smiled up at his father. Dad, I know the first thing we can do to help make a kinder world. The next day, the Victorious received a new name. The new name of the Victorious is Harmonious. Oliver has learned new things also from Horatio. He's learned that the world can be kinder.
Manu, written by Mindy Bingham, illustrated by Toko Maino. Hi, my name is Jamie Slom, and I'm going to be reading Manu. Manu was about a cat who lives in Paris. She isn't very sure of herself, and one day her owner dies, and Manu is left on her own, and she's not sure how to take care of herself, and she's got to learn how to make it on her own on the streets of Paris. Minou was a very contented cat. She lived with her mistress, Madame Violette, on the left bank of the Seine River, in Paris, France. Most spring mornings would find Minou lounging on their apartment balcony high above the river as the barges and the tour boats passed by below. Life was very predictable for Minou. She and Madame Violette would get up early every morning so Madame could paint. Madame Violette was a well-known artist, and many people wanted to buy her paintings. After lunch, Madame Violette would call Minou and clip on her leash so they could go out to do the daily marketing. Minou had never been out of the apartment alone and was glad for the security of the leash. Some afternoons would find them visiting with the other artists in the area as they sold their paintings along the alleys and boulevards. Minou loved the gaiety and the hustle and bustle of the sideway stalls. Other afternoons were spent in a quiet Parisian park as Madame Violette worked for hours sketching and painting lovely fountains, statues, and colorful flowers. Minou could not wander very far on her leash, but that was all right with her because the leash made her feel very safe and secure. It reminded her that Madame Violette was nearby. Madame Violette took very good care of Minou. She gave Minou everything a cat needs or could want. Minou enjoyed the care her mistress gave to her and repaid it by being cute, and cuddly, and attentive. That was her whole job in life. Of course, when someone else takes care of you, there are some things you have to do that you don't like. But on the whole, Minou thought she was the luckiest cat in all of Paris. One night, Minou awoke with a start to find strangers in their home. Two people were bending over her mistress and talking to her in hushed tones. Without telling Minou why, they took Madame Violette out of the apartment on a long stretcher and quickly put her into an ambulance that hurried off into the night. Poor Minou! She didn't know what had happened and she was all alone. She waited and waited for Madame Violette to return. There was no one to feed her, or brush her, or take her out for walks. She certainly didn't know how to feed herself, and she was getting hungry. After 3 very long days, 2 large men finally opened the apartment door. They ignored Minou as they set out to work moving Madame's furniture out to an awaiting truck. Minou heard one of them say that Madame Violette would not be coming back to the apartment because she had passed away. "Well, what should we do about the cat?" one of the men asked as they finished moving the last piece of furniture. The old woman did not have any relatives, so there was no one to take care of her. "The cat will have to make it on her own," the other answered as he put Minou out, shut the front door, and drove off. For the first time in her life, Minou was on her own. By now, Minou was very hungry, and she knew she needed to find someone to take care of her. She had never taken care of herself and did not know the first thing about being on her own and independent. Without her leash, she was scared. Cautiously, she set off to find a new owner. On the right bank, Minou came upon a sidewalk pet shop. There were cages filled with cats, dogs, birds, and bunnies. A man, a woman, and a little girl were gazing into the cages. What luck, Minou thought. They must be looking for a cat to take home. Minou scampered up to them. She rolled onto her back on the pavement and wiggled and played in the air with her paws, looking as cute and cuddly as she could while the people stared in amazement. But just as they were about to pick her up, a big dog ran out of the pet shop barking and growling. Minou jumped to her feet and dashed down the boulevard. The dog chased her until he tired of the game. By this time, Minou was very, very hungry. She stopped in front of one of the many sidewalk cafes on the Avenue des Champs-Élysées. Seated at gaily covered tables, many people from all over the world were enjoying lively conversation, wonderful French pastries such as eclairs and croissants, and the warm spring sunshine. One woman with a large hat caught Minou's eye. "Now if I could only get her attention," thought Minou to herself, "I know she would take me home and take care of me." Minou knew just the way for a cat to get the attention and affection of a person. But Minou's touch startled the lady. She screamed and jumped to her feet. The restaurant owner came rushing over. He grabbed a broom and chased Manu out of the cafe and down the boulevard. So on Manu wandered, tired, lost, and very, very, very hungry. Just as the shops were closing and everyone was going home for the evening, she arrived at the edge of the Place de la Concorde. The Place de la Concorde is the biggest and busiest square in Paris, with cars, trucks, and taxis rushing and honking madly. Manu had never been in such traffic before. All she knew was that she wanted to get across the street to the other side. So she stepped off the curb. Whish, swish went the tires of the car. Manu darted in and out of the roaring traffic, trying to avoid the cars which would not stop. Her heart pounded as one nearly ran her over. At last she saw an opening and raced frantically to reach the other side. She ran under a bush and hid. Her eyes were wide and her fur stood on end. She felt lucky to be alive. By now Manu was so hungry that her ribs showed. Her once beautiful fur was scruffy and matted with dirt. In fact, she was so dirty that you could not tell that she was a Siamese. Manu was desperate, so on she walked. She was no longer cute and cuddly, and she felt no one would want to take her home and take care of her. Finally, she sat down and cried. Manu's howling could be heard for blocks. Zoots alors! Manu turned to come face to face with a sophisticated street cat who introduced herself as Celeste. What is all this commotion about, ma chérie? And my word, look at you. What a sorry sight. Celeste said, shaking her head as she walked around Manu, inspecting her from whiskers to tail. What seems to be your problem? Manu sadly told Celeste her story. She finished and then sobbed, You see, there isn't anyone to take care of me anymore. Feeling sorry for herself, she went on. I'm no longer cute and cuddly and no one wants me. You know, Celeste said wisely, not being able to take care of yourself is a very risky way to live. You can't get by on your looks alone. Everyone should know how to live alone and take care of his or her own needs. Come with me and I will show you how to rely on yourself. Celeste set to work to teach Manu how to take care of herself. Day after day, Manu learned important lessons about hunting mice and finding food. Manu learned quickly and realized happily there was plenty of food if she worked for it. She did not have to worry about going hungry ever again. Manu learned to find shelter in the nooks and crannies of the old buildings of Paris. She even learned that giving herself a bath was much better than having someone do it for her. One very important lesson that Manu learned was how to cross the busy streets safely. Now she felt at home in the city without her leash. She had the confidence to go wherever she wanted. One evening, as Celeste and Manu were watching the sunset, the sky turned many colors. Celeste turned to Manu and said, Manu, it's time for you to find a job. A job, said Manu in a startled tone, but what can I do? You have a lot of skills now, said Celeste. I know of a perfect place for you. I will take you there in the morning. The next morning, the cats were up bright and early before the streets became busy. Manu found herself following Celeste down some stairs into the long tunnel in the ground. Celeste's last lesson was how to ride the metro, the underground train in Paris. Good morning, Celeste, Jacques the conductor said in greeting as they hopped into the cab with him. I see you have a friend this morning. I hope you enjoy your ride. Manu loved the fast, smooth ride. She waved her tail in thanks to Jacques when they got off the train at their station. As they scampered out of the metro tunnel, Manu looked upon one of the most famous churches in the world, the Notre Dame Cathedral. Manu was awed by its tremendous size and beauty. When Celeste explained that it had been built more than 800 years before by people without machines, trucks, or cranes, Manu could understand why it was so famous. Come now to business, said Celeste. The priests of the rectory need a mouser. Lately mice have been getting into the vestry and chewing holes in the beautiful embroidered robes. Someone is needed to patrol and keep the mice out of these priceless treasures. Manu, I think you're just the cat for the job. Before Manu could say anything, Celeste turned to leave. I must go now, Manu. I am certain that you can take care of yourself. How can I thank you? Manu called after her. Celeste paused, looked back over her shoulder, and in a wise and knowing tone said, Someday you may meet another cat like you who needs someone to help her live on her own. You will help that cat as I have helped you. With that, she turned and walked off through the crowded square. Manu inspected the outside of the building. As she crept along beneath the walls of the mighty cathedral, she found the bell tower stairway. She raced up the 387 narrow, winding steps up to the rooftop. What an adventure it was to explore high above the streets below. Thousands of workers had spent years and years carving statues and gargoyles from the stone to decorate the outside of the church and to carry rainwater off the roof. Once, as Manu turned the corner of the building, one especially frightening gargoyle started her and sent her running. Manu tried to look through the windows to see inside. What is this, she wondered. The glass was not clear like normal windows. Instead, it was many different colors. Pieces of glass in blues, reds, purples, greens, yellows were arranged like puzzle pieces into stained glass pictures. Notre Dame Cathedral is famous for some of the largest and most beautiful stained glass windows in the world. Back on ground, Manu scampered through the large front doors of the cathedral and stopped in astonishment. There before her was a huge room with a ceiling so high it made her dizzy to look up at it. The ceiling was held up by the tallest stone columns she had ever seen. More than 9,000 people could come to church at one time in this large room. Just then, Manu heard a scratchy sound over her shoulder. Experience told her that it was a mouse, and it was time for her to go to work. A few minutes later, Manu proudly dropped her catch on the doorstep of the rectory as the priest looked on. Pierre Maurice, Pierre Langer, come and see. Our prayers have been answered. We have a new mouser for the cathedral. They set a saucer of milk on the doorstep for Manu. She quickly lapped it up. She had not had milk for a very long time. Come in, Pierre Maurice beckoned as he opened the door to the rectory wide. We'll take care of you and feed you and bathe you. Manu started to step in, but suddenly stopped. Wait a minute, she said to herself. I don't need anyone to take care of me. I like my freedom. I will work for the priest in exchange for some milk and kindness, but I don't want anyone to own me. With that, she turned and walked off proudly with her tail straight in the air. Say if you have a chance to visit the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, you might see Manu. During the day, she can be found either basking in the sun high above the city or posing for a tourist photograph in the garden behind the cathedral. You might find her joining one of the many daily tours of the beautiful church and listening to the guide tell about the building's history. Manu knows that if she ever wants milk, all she has to do is go to work for the priest. Every once in a while, Celeste comes to visit Manu. Celeste is very pleased to see how happy Manu is in her new life. Manu is her own mistress now, and she knows how to take care of herself. Every evening, as the sun is setting and the lights of Paris are turning the dusk into a twinkle, Manu can be seen crossing the bridge to the Isle de St. Louis, to no one knows where. Manu was a cat of independent means. Manu learned a big lesson. She learned how to take care of herself, and when everyone gets older, they're going to have to learn how to take care of themselves.